that in the end we're on the side of God, and God has decided this contest. Now, how does Satan draw us away? Let's deal with that. He draws us away the same way in different forms or different specific areas of sin, but it's the same process in every one of us when we sin or when we get tempted and pulled away from God by the devil. He tempts our flesh with the stuff of this world. Look what it says in 1 John chapter 2. It's familiar to some of us, but let me read it to you. Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For everything in the world, and he lists three things: the cravings of sinful men. In other translations, that sentence there, or that phrase, is rendered as the lust of the flesh. Write that down on the side of your notes, because I'm going to talk about it in a second. The cravings of sinful man, or the lust of the flesh. There's the lust of his eyes. And then finally, the boasting of what he has and does. It comes not from the Father, these things, but they come from the world. And these are the ploys, the ways, the measures that Satan takes to draw you and I away from God. It's how he gets us on his team. So what does it mean? Well, we'll start first with the lust of the eyes. Here's what Satan does. He takes external images, things that look good, and he says, hey, you want to head towards this stuff. You want to go in this direction. You want to try these things. These things will satisfy you. So we'll be going on in our Christian marriages, guys, and we'll be doing just fine. But then one day we'll be driving along, and it'll be the same piece of 75 we've always been on, but we look up, and there on that billboard is this billboard sign of this scantily clad woman advertising some strip club in town. And all of a sudden, with that one little glance, with the lust of our eyes, we trigger something that can become something so much worse. Because here's what Satan does. He takes the external things, and he gets us to look at them, or he puts them in our way so that we can't help but see them. And then that triggers in us the lust of our flesh, the cravings of our sinful desires. Now here's the deal. We talked about this a few weeks ago, that our identity is in Christ, but we still wrestle with the sins of this world. Anybody here living perfect? Okay, good. No hands. All right. Yeah, we're all still, not good. I mean, it'd be great if we could, but most of us still wrestle with sin. And because we wrestle with sins, this is how Satan gets to trigger it in us. He gets us to look at something, and then he just appeals to this innate inner desire that you and I have to feel good. That looks good, and if I do that or I go participate in that, I'll feel good. It's called hedonism. I want to feel or experience things that just, are rewarding and provide me with a positive, or what I think is a positive experience. And that's why you and I sin. We see something, we think it'll make us feel good, and then we go for it. It's like my cookies. I made cookies Friday night. Oh, yeah, Dwayne had one, didn't you, Dwayne? Yeah. I made cookies Friday night, and they are good cookies. I'm not lying to you. I think they're the best cookies on the earth. I just think they are. And that's why I make them, because I like to eat them. All right? And so I made them, and I'm going to report to you, they were gone yesterday at 4 o'clock. A whole batch of cookies. Why? Because my kids ate them? Oh! Because exactly what I'm telling you, it's been taking place in my life. I walked by my kitchen, 5, 8 times yesterday, and every time I walked by my kitchen, there was the cookie jar. And I wouldn't even be hungry. That doesn't matter. That looks good. That tastes good. It smells good. That'll make me feel good. And so, lust of the eyes connects with lust of the flesh, and all of a sudden, I'm walking by the counter, and I become a zombie. Cookie. And before I know what I'm doing, I'm reaching in there, I got a fistful of them, and I'm walking away. And I'm eating, and I'm like, oh, this feels good. 30 minutes later, I do the same thing again. 24 hours later, they're all gone. In here. And we laugh, but that's exactly how this works in every area of sin that we experience. Looks good, that'll feel good. Off we go. Now here's what happens. You see what it says there? The boasting of what he has and what he does. You know what that is? Here's what Satan does, is he gets us to look at the sin and then to experience the sin. We know that it feels good, and then he tricks us into thinking that we got away with it. And all of a sudden, we've gotten away with sin once, and then we try it again, we get away with it again, and we try to, and we keep getting away with it, and all of a sudden we feel like, hey man, this whole consequence thing that they talk about in sin is not true. I'm doing fine. I'm getting away with this left and right. Maybe this whole God thing's overblown. Maybe, just maybe, I'm God. Because I'm seeming, to be able to handle this pretty easily. And we walk around, and we get emboldened, and we're like, hey, I got away with this sin, I'll try this sin, and I'll try this sin, and I'll try this sin. And that's when Satan sets the hook. Here's what I mean. This is the fishing rod that I was given graciously by a man here in our church that I've never used, because I've lived in Florida for almost 5.5 years, and I've never been fishing. How you doing? All right. Fishing. I mean, like, not dirt fish fishing. I've caught fish in pond, but that doesn't matter. Anyway. The hook gets baited, right? If you go fishing for something, you try to figure out what they're biting. And so you go in your tackle box, or you go into your live bait well or whatever, and you get the thing that's going to work. That's what Satan does with us. He looks down at us. We're fish. He says, how am I going to get Senovich? How am I going to get this guy? Well, I'll try this. Oh, it didn't work. He's not interested. Oh, this. Oh, yeah. He looks at that one, doesn't he? All right? And there you go. That's right. And we look at it, and we see that it's good. It looks good to us. And just like a fish in a pond, we swim by a couple times. You ever been able to watch your fish or watch your hook while you're fishing? And seeing fish get like really close to it, and you're like, come on. And then they swim away. They're just checking it out, seeing if they really want it. All right, but then what happens if that's the lust of the eyes? Well, then the lust of the flesh kicks in. The fish decides, I'm going to go have a bite. So the fish comes up, chomps down on your bait, and it's not a game for them. You know that, right? Like, it's a game for us. They're just trying to get some lunch. And so he walks up, he takes your bait, and he starts swimming away. And he swims away enough, like if it's a big enough fish, or out in the Gulf or something like that, it's a big enough fish, it'll take your reel and it'll go zzz, just like Mark was saying, and all of a sudden, fish on. I got something here. What's the angler do? Does he let all the line just go out of his rod? Oh, neat, we have a fish on. No, what's he do? He runs to the rod, he grabs it, he gets himself set, and then what's his move? Bam! Set the hook. Because that's when he's got you. Isn't that true about us in sin? Satan baits us. He says, here you go. Try this. We try it. And then our flesh kicks in and we're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going all the way. I'm not just going to look. I'm going to taste. I'm going to go. And we taste and we start swimming away and we get that whole boasting feeling like, ha, 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 I got the bait. I'm not getting caught. And then all of a sudden Satan goes, bam! And he sets the hook. And that whole destruction thing I told you about earlier, it kicks in. Because now, the one who thought he was having dinner has become dinner. And that's what Satan wants. Lull you into some sense of impervious, I can handle anything. But then all of a sudden, like a house of cards, it comes all crumbling down. And if I went through the aisles of chairs today, every one of you could give me an account of how that happened in your life. Every one of us. Every one of us. Now, the goal in Christian life is to stop doing that. Is to stop having that experience. To learn not to look at the things that would steer us away. To learn not to take into ourselves the things that would destroy us. To stop with the boasting and get on with the humility. How do we handle it? Let's talk about that more clearly. If we're going to handle this stuff, we defeat him, as it says in your notes, by offering our bodies and our minds to God. We offer ourselves up to God and say, God, this life is yours. I'm not going to let my eyes look at things that will lead me astray. I'm not going to let my desires and my cravings and my flesh determine what comes into my life. I'm going to choose to live a life that you want. Look what it says in Romans 12. You guys know this one, a lot of you. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God, because this is your spiritual act of worship. He says, take your bodies, everything that you have, all of your life, your thoughts, and turn them over, submit them to God. And then what's he say? Verse 2 says this. It says, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Okay, so once you've laid yourself on the altar before God, and you say, God, my life is yours. I'm not going to choose these things for myself. I'm going to choose what you want. Then the next thing that happens is you do the hard work of examining all the ways that you used to get hooked